Thank you guys again for having this. People keep asking me, what can you do? I have a list of things you can do. For one, sign petitions, make calls and texts to the appropriate peoples and offices, seek information and educate yourself and others. I think the biggest thing is being intentional and being informed properly, because there are a lot of assumptions that are going around right now. One being propaganda in the news about who's actually looting and who's not, who's causing the riots, who's not, and also knowing who to donate to. Again, we'll go over that in a second, but engaging in meaningful conversations with Black people. That is a very, very critical situation right now. I mean, you can't learn all of American Black history in one conversation, but you can learn pieces. There are great films to watch to kind of get a sense of what has happened and where the system was rooted and how it was created. There's a movie called Birth of a Nation. Don't watch it with kids. It's what the Ku Klux Klan put Black people to make them seem like beasts. And it was a movie that was very, very popular in America for a long time. And that's a great place to start. 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment, that's actually on Netflix. And it talks about the prison system. So basically the police force in America was created after we abolished slavery, because the whites didn't have anything to do with all these Black people running around, and they were, mostly the South was very upset that they had lost their economic resource. So the police system was created to disenfranchise, dehumanize, and segregate Black people, also to round up, terrorize, capture, and kill. So these actions are not new. This has been around since, again, the end of slavery. And I think that's a conversation that South Asians need to have more often, because people are focused on, oh, the riots and the looting, but that's not the conversation. The conversation is police brutality in general, and that the system was created for that intention. It wasn't created to be a policing service to keep order. It was specifically created to round up free Black people, or terrorize them. And that's where our prison system comes in, which is why our first speaker, I forgot his name, I wrote it down, but he was talking about the prison that they were creating in Los Angeles, the prison system that they were creating in Los Angeles, and how it would be the biggest prison in the world. Now, there are countries that don't have prisons, because like, I believe Costa Rica doesn't have one. I believe the Netherlands, I could be wrong on that, but that's what I read somewhere. We don't need them, but the reason why America has them is because it's also a form of slavery. Because slavery was abolished at this time, and people need to understand Black history. Slavery was abolished, but again, these wealthy white people needed a way to contain their commodity. So creating the police force to round them back up, put them in jail, and create chain gangs, create slave labor that is still prevalent today. Now all of our, majority of our prisons are privatized, meaning you or I can own a prison system that manufactures Victoria's Secret underwear. And who is the population of that prison system? It's majority Blacks and Latinos. So this is something that people need to educate themselves on strongly, like to understand why this is a problem. Now I hear a lot from South Asians, why, but why, but why? And you have to understand the root of the issue and Black history in America to be able to respond to the why. And one thing that is very sensitive to for all of us is, for example, I hear you're hungry, but everybody's hungry. It's a way of sweeping the problem under the table and telling somebody your problem doesn't matter. Black lives matter, all lives matter. No, this really is an issue that has been swept away systematically. And I think that the biggest thing for South Asians right now is to understand the history and understand their own privilege and understand their own space. Like the lady said before me, to be able to speak coherently, to speak and address the issue, and to comfort your Black friends or make new Black friends. But just having that conversation to address the why. The why is simply white supremacy has pushed the complaints, the struggles, the pain, and the terror of the Black community under a rug, just telling all of us it doesn't matter. I've been a victim of this many, many, many times over. In my scenario, 2 white for the Black kids, 2 Black for the white kids, but still picked on by all the races. And it's a very, very uncomfortable space to be. And also, I had a scenario, just a brief scenario. I'm in school right now, and I have a Black professor who was perplexed by my attire, because I dress in all of my cultures on any given day, because that's how I feel. And in front of the class, she called me out and said, "Oh, you're wearing African wear because it's trending right now." I said, "No, ma'am, this is actually my culture." And she didn't really want to hear that. And then she saw a picture of my family and she was like, "Oh, you're Black." But then she tried to minimalize how much Black I was because she couldn't see it on my face. These are conversations that are very painful for Black people. I had another white professor who I had my hair wrapped up in a scarf. It was Gucci, by the way, but he wanted to call it a do-rag. That's fine. And he started making Black jokes in this meeting we were having for a magazine production, and asking me if I knew racist comments, if I knew what a do-rag was, if I knew what a kitchen was, which is a comment for the back of a Black person's hair, and asking me these rude things. Those are microaggressions that lead to these massive outbursts and these massive outrages. Like when this police officer put his knee on his neck and then swept it under the rug, that is the same thing in a different form. But now you have the death of a Black person, which is, again, in this country, people have commodified Black bodies, period. Black bodies since the beginning of this country have been bought and sold. And that's the same with hip hop culture, even though it was created by Black people, but it was taken over by corporate. It's the same with our clothes, the way that we speak, the way that we act. Everybody wants to be Black, but nobody wants to be Black. So those conversations of saying, "Oh, I love everything about you, but I don't want to help you."
Kumari, can you say that last part again? Because that's really important.
Everybody wants to be Black, but nobody wants to be Black. And that's the truth the world over. Everybody wants to claim it, using, like the lady said before me, using the N-word, rappers with swag. You know, I mean, hip hop in itself is there's an African tradition called a griot that comes from West Africa, and they came, and it was a way that us as Black people audibly told and shared our histories and traditions, and it was usually done through song and dance. So hip hop is a branch of that. It's a branch of what was already in our roots and in our culture, to be able to speak and tell our stories. And the stories that came from hip hop were from the oppressed neighborhoods that these people came from. Now, not everybody in hip hop culture today was oppressed. Not everybody in South Asian hip hop culture today was oppressed. Not saying that people aren't, but some people aren't. And so I think you need to realize what you're emulating, that being Black is a commodity. It's something that you want to buy into. You want to be hood to be cool. You want to post Black Lives Matter because it seems cool to you, and you want to look like you're doing the in thing without really checking up on the people that it matters to most. And if any of you do have Black friends, call them. Be like, "Hey, mental health checkup, how are you? Like, legit, how are you? How can I comfort you? How can I help you? How can I hold your hand? What do you need me to do for you?" One of my friends made a really great post about an idea of what to do. If all Black people stayed home right now and all the other races and celebrities went out and protested for them, if Black people were removed from the equation, you can't blame them for the looting and the rioting. and you can't blame them for what's being pinned on them. And this is another expression of the same thing. Black Lives Matter exploded, and then people are creating a ruse. They're creating a distraction with these looting situations and these riots to dismantle Black Lives Matter, to give you a distraction. Like, why are these Black people doing this? Why is that such a big deal? Again, the why. So if everybody else can hold up the Black race, because we're tired, we're really fucking tired. Excuse my mouth if there's kids.
No, it's okay, yeah.
We're tired of being blamed for everything. We're tired of being bullied. We're tired of being abused. And then yet everybody wanting to take the richness of what we give into the universe. We're tired. And I think that's where other races can step in, and even just to say, I got you. That goes a long way. I saw another video of this whole squad of white people kneeling in front of a crowd of Black people apologizing. Do you know how far an apology would go for some people? Like, I was weeping because that emotion runs so deep. Just a simple, heartfelt, genuine apology. Check in when you can with your Black friends, on top of everything that was mentioned today. Like, everything that was shared is incredible, and I really applaud everybody for having so many beautiful resources and voices to be heard. And for those who have privilege, who are economically stable, and can donate and can give more, please do. I mean, I think, one last thing. When you're posting, I said this a little bit, but when you're posting, please be sure you know what you're posting about. Please be sure, please. I saw a dance influencers page, and they were doing the Black Lives Matter situation, and I was like, cool, appreciate it. But then in the sub comments on that movement, there was a white person who was in there spouting privilege, like, I don't see why this matters, I don't see blah, blah, blah. And a Black person was kindly responding. And that white person responded back, and it went on, same. And there was another Indian person of privilege, and that same Black person responded kindly back. But this dance influencers page did exactly the opposite of what they were promoting, which was Black Lives Matter, but they weren't creating a safe space for this Black person to speak. This Black fan that was commenting on these people who were creating microaggressions towards Black Lives Matter. And you have to call out the buffoonery, because it's unnecessary. If you're gonna post, know what you're posting about. So if that influencer had known what this movement was about, they would have been able to respond to those people. They would have been able to have had that Black person's back. Instead, they added to the problem. And that on top of everything else I just said, do some homework, like, research the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was birthed by Black people as a response to economics. Plain and simple. They saw that everyone else got a seat at the table and they were not included, and they fought for that. And that's what it came down to. They saw that there was a glass ceiling on the jobs they could get, the healthcare they could get, the way they could provide for their families. And that's why the civil rights movement started. But on top of the brutality, absolutely. But that was the core of it, why young, educated people of the time were like, no, I want that too. I want to have the option of having privilege. And that's what you guys need to, like, learn more about. Toni Morrison is a great person to research. There's a great documentary on her. Madam C.J. Walker, she was the first Black millionaire in America, which was right after the abolition of slavery, which was absolutely unheard of, and she was a Black woman. All the civil rights activists of the time, get into the music, get into the culture, get into what we're saying as a Black race and why these are so important. Like Nina Simone's song, Strange Fruit. It was about low-hanging fruit on a tree, which were actually Black bodies that were strung up and lynched. And as you walked on this road, you would see these black bodies swinging in the wind and the smell of this rotting fruit. Like, you need to listen to these songs and understand what people are speaking of. So I could go on. I hope that helped.
They absolutely did, because it came from a very vulnerable place. And you told us exactly. Here's the thing, we all have narratives. And you gave us your narrative, but you also included the narrative of the people that came before you. And that's so, so, so important.